Yeah, you kind of basically took this. Oh.
All right, folks, since it is 6 o'clock and we do have the necessary personnel here to start our meeting, so I will go ahead and call this town hall meeting to order at 6 p.m. I will go ahead and turn this meeting over to our city manager and the team that's working on this information.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out to hear about, to learn about this proposed street millage that the city is looking to have on the August primary ballot. Tonight, we're here just to provide you with just informational info on what this proposed millage could do for our community. I think we are all in agreement that we're not happy with the current condition of our roads. And in order to change that, we unfortunately have to identify a new level of funding. So I am Haley Snyder. I'm the city manager here in Albion. I'll turn it over to everyone to introduce themselves, and then I'll kind of give you a little bit of a brief overview, and then turn it over to our engineers who are assisting us with this project.
Patrick Miller, Director of Public Services. I've been doing this for about 1.5 years now. So if you have any street related questions, reach out to myself or street superintendent, Kevin O'Brien.
Hi, my name is Kevin O'Brien. I've been with the city of Albion for the past 10 months. I came here from Montana with 30 years experience in streets. And hopefully we can make some changes as quick as possible.
My name is Mickey Bittner. I'm an engineer with Whiteman Associates. I've been with the company about 25 years, and I've been working with the city of Albion since 2004.
And I'm Phil Dorlag. I'm also an engineer with Whiteman and Associates. I've been with Whiteman for almost 16 years and been working in Albion since about 2008. We were just talking about it as we were driving over here today.
So thank you all for coming out. So how this started, it is a priority of the city council as well as city administration to improve the condition of our roads. Like I said, we're all, there's no shortage of need here in our community. And I think we're all in agreement that the current condition, that we're not happy with that. So we are looking to improve that. On the table, there are several different informational materials or handouts. So I hope everyone grabbed one. Just to kind of give a brief overview of what they are. So you have what the current street millage, what that brings in. Right now, the city, we have a street millage of 3 mills. That's been in place for quite some time. It was just recently renewed and is set to expire in 2025. So when looking at that, so the tax amount levied, it comes out to being $286,927.17. And then when you take out of the required captures, which go to our Downtown Development Authority, our TIFA district, as well as the brownfield, that's roughly $20,000. So we're left with $266,061 to work with to improve our streets. This is solely for street improvement. It goes into our street improvement fund. It is not a part of the general fund. And so I can say on social media, there's been kind of a lot of misinformation out there. So I just want to make that clear. This does not go into the general fund. It goes solely into our street improvement fund. So it is separate. It is a separate tax. It is not used for other services other than street improvements. Also, you have an infrastructure improvement project summary, which highlights the different infrastructure projects that the city has been able to accomplish from 2008 up to 2023. And with the last 2 projects are Haven Road, which is set to be completed next year, as well as the North Albion Street Bridge, which we all know that that bridge needs to be repaired, which the city was lucky to obtain a grant to make that project happen. So if you want to just review the different projects that have been able to be completed with the current street millage, that is for you as well. Again, there's also the draft 6-year road improvement plan. So if this proposed street millage is approved by the voters, it does have to go to our residents to vote on. We have come up with different projects over a 6-year time period that will be able to be supported or funded through this proposed millage. This is a working document document. And then the gentleman from Whiteman and Associate, they'll be able to explain how these projects were identified, why they are included. And this is just a starting point. Like I said, there's no shortage of need here in our community. I think all of our streets need to be redone, but we have to start somewhere. So they will be able to provide a little bit more information here and a little bit about that. Also, there's a breakdown of just the different treatments that have been included in the proposed draft plan. They will also kind of speak on those, what those all entail and what they mean. I think most of us think of a full reconstruction, which means they take it down to the dirt and brand new road is put in place. However, that is the most expensive project. So we have to utilize several different approaches when kind of maintaining our roads. I know we all wish that they could be fully reconstruction, but in order to do that, we would need millions of dollars. And unfortunately, when it comes to our local roads, the city has been very good at taking advantage of any state and federal grant opportunities. But unfortunately, a lot of those grant programs, they don't apply to the local streets. And the local roads, those are the streets that our residents drive on majority of the time. So we're trying to, unfortunately, it falls on the residents to come up with the funding to maintain or make those projects come to life. So I think the first grant program that could be applied to local streets, we applied for and we took advantage of it for the first, second, third Wild and Hartwell Street project. The city received $250,000 in grant funding. However, that project was $1.7 million. So when you look at the total cost to complete that project, that grant funding is just a drop in the bucket. Road improvements it's an issue that communities across the state are dealing with. And with everyone trying to improve and maintain the roads, that drives up the cost of that. MDOT, they actually released an article the other day that the cost of projects have increased drastically. Bids are coming in about 13 to 15% over what they estimated. So that's additional dollars that we have to come up with to just get those projects completed. So we're not alone in this. Communities all over are trying to find ways to improve their streets. Like I said, this is a problem that we're experiencing across the state. In addition, there is also a draft tax bill. So if this proposed millage goes into place, we've developed a draft tax bill on what your potential taxes, property taxes would be once this goes into place. It all depends on the value of your home. So we provided different samples on if you have a taxable value of 25,000, 50,000, 75,000, 100,000, 125,000. So this is just information for you all to have as we look to seek additional road funding. As I mentioned, this has to be approved by our voters. The city, we're able to levy, I believe it's 12 mills in tax levies, and we're at that max. So that's why we have to take it to our voters to get this approved. And it's not just a simple approval. You have to have 3/5 majority approve this. So really it falls on the residents to, if this is something that you all would like to see, it has to be approved by the voters by a good majority. And since we are at that max, if this is approved, it will go into effect for 3 years. And then it is required to go back before the voters to be reapproved. However, we've come up with a draft plan that covers 6 years, just to kind of give you an idea of what the level of projects that we'd be able to accomplish with this additional tax funding. What else? The city, we've kind of started this discussion on identifying funding for our roads. We're working with Whiteman and Associates to develop a transportation asset management plan. So throughout this plan, we will identify the different infrastructure projects when it comes to our roads, sidewalks, to maintain. We're at a point though that we need to identify a level of funding to support that transportation plan. So that's why we have started having these conversations. It's been, we've had study sessions with council, and they have given city administration the direction to look at 6 mills. That's what the proposed street millage will be. That will bring in an additional roughly $500,000 for the city to work with to accomplish these street projects. there's anything else that I want to say. Dr. Miller, do you have anything you'd like to add to that before we hand it over to the engineers?
Basically, just echo what you said. I think everybody here is disappointed with the condition of our roads, and we all know that they need a lot of work everywhere across the city. And this Whiteman has put together a plan to touch various parts of the city in a good way, and I think it's a great plan, and hope everybody else can agree and move forward.
And with this, I think it's no surprise to everybody, the city of Albion, we've seen a decline in our population, started beginning in the 80s until currently. With the recent census, we've lost an additional 900 residents. So unfortunately, the burden, however, we have not gotten rid of any roads. We've not gotten rid of any water mains, sewer mains. So we still have that level of infrastructure that supported a booming population well back in the early 80s and 90s. However, we have less property owners to help maintain that level of service. So you all are continuing to pay your property taxes, but the level of service that you are receiving has decreased because we don't have that same population that we had to increase the amount of revenues that the city would receive to maintain that level of service. We're looking at our Director of Planning and Building, Ian Arnold. He provided me, we would need an additional 6,000 residents to move to Albion to maintain, to kind of help lift that burden from our current residents. So we're well aware that this proposed millage, it is a burden to our residents. However, we have to maintain the service that we are responsible to provide to our residents. So this is what we're doing. We're trying to identify a way to do that. And with that, I would turn it over to Mickey and Phil to kind of go over the different projects that have been identified in the plan. I think this is the first time the city has come up with a plan that this will allow the residents to hold us accountable for what we're doing with your tax dollars. I think before we've just went out and seeked road funding and just, okay, we're going to fix your roads. However, we've never had an actual plan that we will follow. So we're looking, by implementing this will all allow you all to hold us accountable to make sure that we are utilizing your tax dollars to the best of our ability.
All right, thank you. Again, my name is Mickey Bittner, and we kind of worked through that. And there was some transition in personnel at the city prior to Haley and Patrick, and but we finally got, I think, council gave direction to Haley and her team, and it got passed on to us to get this moving again. And so we completed that, and we hit a spot where we said, okay, part of it is preparing a capital improvements plan, which is what are you going to pursue? What are you going to initiate, undertake over a period of time? Can you guys hear me okay? Hear a no? No. I'll stand up and see if I project any better. I'll try and kick it up. For the city, and then also as presented to council, as Haley mentioned, to select an option to look at. And that's where we arrived at. The signal was provided to look at. So we estimated what that would generate for revenue, and then applied that. Now, one thing that we found is surprising to a lot of people. Ready to start over? All right. A lot of people are surprised with an asset management plan. It's a little bit different approach than what we might conventionally look at. And what research has found is that maintaining those roads that are in, we kind of rate them in different groups of good, fair, or poor. And the longer we can keep them in good and fair condition, They did, well, the goal is to keep that road in good condition or keep it in fair condition. Because once they get to poor, then it gets really expensive. Haley alluded to that. On that note, I would like to go over the sheet that has the different types of treatments. So if you look at, it's one that has kind of 3 columns, I guess, but it's got roadway pavement treatments at the top. And I'll go from left to right across this sheet, but you see a reconstruction, and that's a full depth, so that's rebuilding the road from the bottom. Find a way to build a road that lasts longer than 5 years, 10 years, and in our climate, that's a tough ask because of the freeze thaw cycles that we go through. And the moisture gets in and cracks develop from the heat, the cold. We start getting cracks, moisture gets in there, and then it freezes shortly after. Water is the one compound that every other. I'm not starting over. So the city does, basically every 4 years, the city gets a good chance at that money right there. Your local streets, everything else, so your state gas tax comes back to cities, villages, and county road commissions. There's a formula for it. And that comes back, and that is intended to cover maintenance. So maintenance would be snow plowing, pothole patching. It might cover some crack sealing, maybe, maybe not, but it basically covers your general maintenance and upkeep of the roads. So it doesn't really provide for capital improvements. The city has done a good job, or has had a millage over the years to do some local streets or help, and that money has been leveraged. A couple things. One, local streets when the money's available. Otherwise, when grants become available, to leverage the local dollars to secure more funds to do larger projects or do any project where you can just stretch the dollars. One of the handouts that was available at the table shows these are projects that I was involved with, and I think it was 2014 or so, and the Director of Public Services just asked me to put together a list of projects that the city had done. It looks like this is title at the top, says City of Albion Infrastructure Improvement Project Summary. And I just kind of kept it going, and it's keep adding to it as the city undertakes projects, but I think it's pretty impressive to show since 2011, the city has done just about $16 million worth of road projects. Now, some of those did include water main, and there's a park project listed in here too, but about $9.5 million worth of grant. So what you've seen done has been leveraged very well. At the same time, you also see the condition that's still out there, right? So I think it's, how do we improve that? How do we move the dial on that? And so did want to share that. So your local streets are largely, and Albion's not alone in this. I mean, pretty much every community in the state, and probably much of northern North America is probably dealing with this. The ones that have the freeze thaw, especially. How do we improve our local streets, and what funding mechanisms are available for that? Okay, as Haley mentioned, in my 25-year career, the first time there's been a grant that was focused specifically on local streets came out 3 years ago, and the state MDOT committed to 5 years for that program. And that's the grant, category B grant, was secured for first, second, third, wild, and Hartwell, thank you. Yeah, okay. First, second, third. Yeah, first, second, third, Wild and Hartwell. So it was 250,000 was the maximum grant amount for that. And as Haley mentioned, that was 1.7 million roughly. So it helps, but it's not a huge part. The city did secure a $2 million grant for Irwin Avenue a couple years ago. You see that on here. And I think the city portion was about 300,000 or 400,000. I forget. It's probably showing on here. 600,000 maybe. Yep, 600,000. So that was 1.2 miles. It was water main replacement for the whole road and complete reconstruction. So construction is not cheap. And as the roads get to poor condition, it warrants the full reconstruction. So with all that, I guess, a little background on kind of the how and the why. Then we came up with using the projected funds that would be developed from the additional millage and the city's current street millage, looking at how that would improve the condition of the roads and what projects would be targeted. And I think we looked at moving around, trying to do projects within 2 precincts of the city each year and then rotate those through so that after 3 years, all 6 precincts would have roadway improvements in them. And in that document, you'll see there's different types of treatments. So there's crack sealing, There is mill and resurface, single course. There's full depth pavement reconstruction. And there's some chip seal, fog seals that are shown. And these are done, so we have a software that's used. The condition of the roadways is, a condition assessment was conducted. All roads are rated 1 through 10. 1 being the worst, 10 being brand new reconstructed. And one thing to note, a requirement of this software, this program, or the program really of doing the assessment, the year a road is reconstructed, it's a 10. The next year, it's automatically a 9. So they don't stay at 10. It can stay at a 9 for a long time. That's very possible, but so the 10s are pretty rare. It just happens in the year it's reconstructed. And there's different treatments that are recommended based on the rating. So for example, once a road gets to be a 1 or a 2, we probably aren't going to be doing a resurface. So we're not going to do a crack seal. There's no way we're going to do that. We're not going to do a fog seal. We have actually had some decent, I think we've had really good fortune with some of the local streets that have been rated pretty poorly. We've done a 2-course resurface on, and that's held up over time really, really well. Where that's happened. On the major streets, we would not have that fortune, but some of the local streets, those can be done a little more economically. And the city's done that with the local streets. I wasn't going to go through every project on here. I guess if people want to, they can answer specific questions, but you will see treatments done to roads that are relatively new, especially crack sealing is something you want to get on top of those and be proactive with crack sealing. And chip sealing and some of the resurfacing. And again, the goal on that is to keep roads in the good and fair and good condition as long as possible. And then attack the ones that are in poor condition, attack those as resources are available. We stay pretty plugged in. The city gets notified of grant opportunities, as do we. And anytime something comes up that we think we can leverage, we always have a conversation about that. There are certain funds that only certain roads qualify for. So sometimes we have to shift and we say, okay, I think a couple of years ago when we did North Clark Street, Haven was our next priority that the city had identified, but there was a grant opportunity that would only apply to North Clark Street. Okay, that was probably down the road a few years. It wasn't the next priority, but if we could get that covered with a significant grant, that makes a lot of sense to leverage that. Those funds could not have been spent on any other street. It was North Clark, and that was it. Because it was due to Knauf expansion that they were doing. So when programs like that are available, we always have to have the conversation about how do we reprioritize or how can we leverage this. If it's a project we absolutely don't need, okay, we're not going to apply for it. It doesn't do any good. But if there's a way that we can use funds that are available, take the local funds, stretch them as far as possible, we always want to take care of that. There are some other programs that can use local streets that can fund reconstruction on local streets. There aren't many, but the one I mentioned is the only one that's been targeted at local streets. There's some others that we can use that come up periodically through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. That's what we used on Irwin Avenue. And there's other streets we try to attack with that. Another thing that we do with these road projects is we want to coordinate them with utilities. If you heard Patrick mention, I think, and Haley about other infrastructure. So a lot of times for us, well, probably not for me, I'm obsessed with infrastructure, but for a lot of you, it's out of sight, out of mind. So, you turn your faucet, water comes out, you flush the toilet, disappears, everything's good. Well, under a lot of your streets, there's a network of water and sewer. So the water main is what brings you your water. The sewer is what makes the wastewater go away from your washing machine, your sinks, toilets, dishwashers, all those things. Showers, bathtubs. We also have storm sewer. So that's water that comes when it rains and the snow melts, it makes its way into the gutter pans, hopefully. And then you have the grates, or catch basins, the water enters that, goes into a storm sewer. So we found as we reconstructed roads, a lot of that storm sewer we get down close to it and it just falls apart. So the only thing keeping it in place right now is everything packed around it. And as soon as you get close to it, that falls apart. So Patrick and I and his team, and often Haley as well, but when we're looking at an opportunity for some road funding, what's the condition and age of the water main, sanitary sewer, storm sewer? We do not want to make a big investment on the surface just to start digging that up for water main breaks in a couple of years, sewer breaks. The city did take advantage of a SAW grant probably 5 years ago now. That was one issued by the state of Michigan. It was stormwater asset management and wastewater. And the city was able to televise most of the sanitary sewers. So we now have a good idea of those conditions, which was unknown. I mean, it was, your sewers are, I forget the age, 60, 80, maybe 100 years old. If something collapsed, it goes and gets fixed, but no one really knew. A lot of times there's cracks, there's pieces that have collapsed and you don't know about it. Well, this grant made it available to televise the sewer. So a camera went in there and now there's good documentation on the condition of the sanitary sewers. The storm sewers did not get televised, the funds that were limited, but the sanitary sewers did. So we now have good condition assessment of that. Water main, we can't televise, it's pressurized. So it can be done, but it's really, really expensive. So we typically look at the age that it's built and the type of material that it is. And the city has a lot of really old water main, and a lot of it's cast iron. It's very brittle. Sometimes just the rattling of a heavy truck can trigger a break on that. So we replace it with ductile iron pipe now as a common material, and so we often coordinate that. But I just bring that up because it's not just the streets, it's all the infrastructure. So all of that is looked at to try to be efficient with the funds. Let's dig up the street once, replace what needs to be replaced, and then build the road back properly. So there's a lot of coordination that goes into that. From the sewer televising, there are some things that there are some immediate needs, I think, that were addressed, and there's some that are spaced out over the next 20 years. A capital improvement plan that was put together for that. Water main, we look at similarly, that's based on age, and it's also on break history. So talked to Patrick and his team with the utility department. They say, yeah, we've had 3 breaks there in the last 5 years. Okay, that's a lot. If that's in a few block section, that's a lot of breaks, and it really is. And so, okay, that tells us when that road gets addressed, the water has to be replaced as well. So, and then to tie on to that, I don't want to turn this into a water meeting, but the state has a new lead and copper rule. You probably heard some of that because of lead water services. So when water mains are replaced, the city's also looking at the service lines. If they are lead, they have to be replaced actually into the house as well. So there's a lot of moving parts in this, and we try to be proactive and address them on the front end and then incorporate them into the overall capital improvements plan. The cost that you see, estimated cost by year, is for the street improvements only that's in here. So the water main, sanitary sewer are not included in this. In the reconstruction, I think some of the storm sewer costs is in there. Yeah. So, and again, the storm sewer is the one that takes the rainwater, precipitation, snow melt, and conveys that. So in addition to gas, natural gas, which is a private utility, there's sometimes underground telephones, sometimes electric, but you also, the main ones that the city is responsible for: water main, sanitary sewer, storm sewer. So sometimes there's fiber underground as well. Sometimes we find things, we don't know what they are, but there's a lot of things underground. So sometimes we dig them up and we find out, we stand over and we go, who knows what this is, and we just don't know. There's no record of it. So another thing we really try to do is document things well now, so that 20, 30 years from now, people aren't standing around saying, what were they thinking 20, 30 years ago? So that might be Patrick 20 years from now, but I won't be around then. So anyways, that's some of the background information. The projects that were selected, they were projects that fit the budget and the right repair at the right time. So a lot of this is, it's often called a mix of fixes. So there's different types of treatments, and it's about applying the right treatment at the right time. If the city continues to monitor the ratings and their PASER ratings, what's called, it's pavement and surface evaluation rating. Okay, all right. It's PASER. And that's the 1 through 10 that I referenced earlier. If we document that on a maybe annual or every other year basis, we will start to develop graphs and charts that will more accurately tell us what rate the city's roads degrade at. We have a pretty good idea. The state of Michigan actually has a central location that everybody sends their PASER ratings to. And when we did this last, the city got reimbursed for the cost of doing those ratings from a grant that was available. It's not one that's advertised. It's a pretty quiet one, but we were able to get the city reimbursed for that. But they keep track of it. So we already have a lot of good information for the state of Michigan as a whole. But keep in mind that includes the UP, all the way down to the state line. So it's
everything. It's all types of roads too.
yeah, so state roads, local roads, major streets, everything. But it's really helpful to have a local reference.
With that,
The city council knows I can talk for infrastructure on hours, so I gotta rein me in, or if I'm going too long, someone just wave.
so just a few minutes before we turn it over for questions. So our average PACER rating for our roads is 3, so 4. 3.049. So majority of our roads are in poor condition. But like I said, with the creation of this asset management plan, it's a starting point. We have to start somewhere. I know there will be a lot of roads that aren't in this current plan. However, if we keep identifying funding, we'll be able to eventually get to those roads to improve their condition as well. So in addition to the transportation asset management plan, we also have a water asset management plan, a wastewater asset management plan. And we're looking to combine those, as I think Mickey mentioned, to have a comprehensive asset management plan. So when we're looking to do the reconstruction, the full reconstruction, we'll also be coordinating the water and sewer improvements as well. I believe Mickey stated that. Does it make sense to redo a road and then 3 to 5 years later, we're coming back and digging up that nice road to do the improvements underneath? So we're trying to coordinate all of these plans to make sure we're getting the most bang for our buck. And with that, we're always looking for grant opportunities to take advantage of. However, a lot of the grants that are available, they require a local match. So we have to have some funding available to fulfill that requirement. I just announced at the last city council meeting in my city manager's report, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, they just announced a funding opportunity that we can take advantage. It's geared towards the replacement of water and sewer infrastructure. With that, this is a way to tie in, a road project. So we're looking at Dean and Hogan Drive. I don't know if everyone's aware that we're having this year. We have McIntosh Park. There are a lot of proposed improvements to that park with the new playground and a new splash pad. That's going to, the area is going to become a hot destination here in our community. So I think the roads, if you've all been in the area, they are in terrible condition. So not only for the improvements at the park, but the residents who live within the area, as well as all of you all deserve to have nice roads, water, and sewer infrastructure as well. So we will be taking advantage of that grant opportunity to hopefully get funding to make those improvements in that area. That grant, it requires at least a 10% match. We have a estimate for that project. We're looking at $1.8 million. So we're going to have a nice match to go along with that. So we'll kind of turn it over to you all now. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask us, this will be your time. This also is the first, like I said, first of many. We are looking to schedule multiple of these. So if we are scheduled to end at 7:30 today or this evening. But if you have additional, if we're not able to get to your questions, feel free to contact us directly, or please come out to additional sessions. We're looking to hold sessions during the day for people who may work the night and later shifts to give them the chance to come out and learn the same information. So this is the one of many. We'll continue to engage with our residents as much as possible.
that say $2 million for Macintosh Park improvements? $2 million?
Yes, so the Albion Community Fund, that's a donation that was made by the DiNicola family. So they are giving us $2 million to
Oh,
make
they're-
those improvements. This is not a cost to the city, so we are very blessed and fortunate to have received that grant to make very well-needed improvements to that park space. Right now, it's a huge empty park. And a lot of children live within that area and they deserve to have a nice park that they can take advantage
I
of.
don't think I've ever seen that park. Where is it?
It's located in precinct, in the first precinct, right off of Dean and Hoagland, and
Northwest corner.
yes, so the northwest corner of our community. So that is all funded by the DiNicola family. So we're very thankful for that donation. Yes,
We live on East Broadwell Street, way over by the Armory.
Mhm.
And we've been there 20 years. Our street has never had anything major done to it. A year ago, last fall, there were men up there, street men up there, and they were digging up the lawns near the curbing, and they put in different colored flags, I assume for water lines, electricity, whatever. And then they reseeded. They did a beautiful job. And one day, as I was backing out of my drive, I said, "What's going on?" And the guy said, "Well, we're doing this because you and Burrow and Hall, and I think there was another street, are going to get your streets fixed this coming spring, summer." Well, we were all excited. All of us over there were so pleased to think. And it didn't happen. And all of a sudden, one day I was at a church meeting and the lady said, I said, they haven't started on our street. I don't understand. And she said, well, there was an awful lot of work going on behind me. And she lives on Eaton Street. And they decided to go do that. And I did some investigating because we were told our street was going to get done. And I was told by a very good source, I'm not going to mention names, that Garrett Brown told his people that if they would vote for him, he'd see that their streets got done next. Well, Garrett Brown didn't win, so how does he know they voted for him?
And how do you know
But-
Garrett Brown said that?
yeah, this is,
But-
we're not gonna bash, this isn't a bash.
No,
session.
I
We're
don't
not
know.
trying
That's
to
not what I'm
Why call
saying.
refrain
You
from
can't verify
Oh.
what you're saying. Why call names?
Okay. A person said. Anyway, it didn't happen. And we over in our neighborhood have no understanding of why. And we pay darn good taxes too. We're not, I mean, there's nice houses over there. And we pay good taxes. And nothing has been done to that street the whole time we've lived there. And I don't know how much before. And nothing shows here of anything, at least through 2026, and I don't understand. We've had lots of, they come through with the tar and the whatever and fill the potholes, and then 3 months later, they come through and do it again. And we have a lot of trucks, school buses. It's a very busy place between Clark and Maple. They use that street a lot.
So I can't speak on what was promised from previous administration. I've only been with the city in my role as city manager for a year, similar to Director Miller as well as Superintendent O'Brien. So we're coming up with a new plan to address those needs. As I started, there's no shortage of needs here in our community. We're well aware that multiple streets have not been touched for years.
I
So
understand
this is a
that.
starting point. Like I said, not every street will be included in this plan, but we have to start somewhere. And with that, I know a lot of gas lines have been replaced that put out the flags. And I believe that's the project that you're referring to, that just happened along within precinct 5. A lot of that happened last year or last spring and summer.
Well,
That's
then why
separate from
didn't
the
you tell
city.
me it was for the streets?
That I can't speak on that.
Yeah.
I don't know who
Yeah,
that
you
individual was.
One suggestion would be, if you talk to a street worker and they tell you something, call city management. We can verify or dispel a rumor.
But I called and I talked to somebody this morning and they were gonna call me back this afternoon. Last week I called and I left a message. I never got a call. So, you know, it gets a little frustrating after a while.
And I can understand
And
that.
these guys were not street men. They were somebody that came in and was doing all this.
Okay, probably
It's
the,
a mistake.
yep, or Simcoe.
Simcoe does a lot of work throughout town. They're replacing a lot of gas lines right now. So
Well,
you'll
they haven't
see,
done anything.
you'll
up
see
there.
Simcoe all over.
Right.
And a lot of the work they do is underground, so they do underground
And
boring.
their trucks are usually out there. If they're doing it, they're trucks with their names on them, and these weren't that, but.
Subcontractor is Miller. They were the ones doing all the gas lines in your area.
So we're going to other questions? Ms. Harden, if someone wants one.
I think this is for Patrick. How do you determine which potholes to fill? Because I'm not complaining a lot, but Maple Street has become a zigzag zone, driving on the opposite side.
You want to talk about your plan?
How do you determine which size, which depth, which holes are filled and which aren't?
I'd like to address that if I could.
I think this is like the worst time for our streets right now. We're just coming out of the winter season, so now a lot of the potholes have become worse just from the freeze and melting freeze and expansion. So we're seeing the damage that the winter season has happened. Superintendent O'Brien, he has come up with a patching plan. We implemented one last year. It was shared at City Council. It was published. It is on the agenda for discussion at our next council meeting. Asphalt plants, they open this week, I believe, next week. So after that, we will begin doing our hot patching. So right now, this is the worst condition for our streets because like I said, we're coming out of that winter season. So not only the potholes that we had going into the winter season have gotten worse, but then new potholes have also been created from the plowing and just the weather conditions. So, would you like to share your patch plan?
Yes, the asphalt that we use in the winter time is called cold patch. We buy that up in Jonesville. The trouble with that material is it goes in the hole real nice and fixes the hole. It's black, it compacts. As soon as water penetrates that, within a few short hours, pebbles start to break apart, pothole reoccurs. You get a good rainstorm, most of the patching we did the previous few days is gonna come out. So you will get reoccurring potholes even though we've been there patched. When you get into your summer hot mix, which I believe is gonna start right after Easter, that's what they're intending to do. You can get the hole dry to start with, get a little tack oil in there, put the hot patch in, that will stay. Hopefully that will stay for an extensively long time. What's going to kill that, once again, as Mickey was saying, freeze and thaw are not friends of asphalt. And the worst time to try to fix roads is in the winter. You cannot purchase the material that's durable enough to last. That's a struggle. That's a struggle anywhere it freezes and thaws.
Do you know which area we're starting with this year?
So the patch plan, once hot mix becomes available, we want to get priority streets first, which would be state routes, trunk line. When those streets are done and they're not in bad shape now, then we go to the majors. Get the worst holes on the majors, especially where the tire tracks hit the most. Once we get a handle on what we would call majors and state routes, that's where we're going to start into the areas. Albion's broke down into 4 areas. Last year, we started our patch plan in area 2. This year, which would be the northeast. This year, the plan would be to start in the southwest. The goal would be to purchase asphalt and patch potholes every day until the phone calls quit or we do not see any more holes. And I'm the guy you want to call if you got a pothole, and I'm more than willing to give my number out.
Patrick Miller.
We will respond.
That's Kevin O'Brien.
My phone number, Public Works Superintendent Kevin O'Brien, 517-204-8255. 8963. That is a cell phone that's with me 24/7. I would prefer not to be called late at night unless it's an emergency, but I do answer that phone.
And we're required to just, by the contract that we have with the state of Michigan, we have to tackle the state trunk lines in the major streets first. That's just a requirement of that contract. It goes to our reimbursements that we receive from the state of Michigan. So similar in the winter time, that's why we start with those streets first when plowing, and then we move to the local roads. That's just the requirement that we have per that contract. So we'll shift over to this side.
So, thank you for all of the information. That was a lot of information. What I'm struggling with as a community member is I don't have a sense, you're giving me pieces. Here's this piece, here's this piece, here's this piece. I'm hearing that tonight, but I don't have a full picture of what you all plan to do. And I think a lot of the questions are around how did you choose the roads that you took? I understand that. I'm talking about a holistic picture of how you're gonna do what you're gonna do. And how you chose the roads you chose for this particular project. Was equity, how did equity play a part in that? How did other projects that are being funded elsewhere play a part in that? And if as a community member, what I'm getting is just this. My question is, why this road, not that, without understanding the full picture that includes the pothole pieces, the other funding source pieces. You get what I'm saying? Because I think you're gonna get a lot of questions that you don't have to take in these town halls if we don't have a holistic plan of what.
Yeah. So the draft plan, we broke it down by precinct. So we try to utilize 2 precincts per year. So with this draft plan, we're starting with precinct 3 and 6. And we did that just based off the previous projects. So just previous years, we just had last year, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, Wild and Hartwell, which was precinct 1. Then we also had.
So Eddie, what I'm saying is, it's not helpful for you to just tell me that.
Yep.
Because that's not what we have in writing. That's not what's going out to the community. You're gonna continue, you don't
Oh,
have to
yep.
answer that for me,
Yep.
other than what was the process you chose for this particular project, or maybe not. But to go through and explain it again is not what I'm saying. Like, you need, as a, you need to be able to read more and understand the whole. I understand listing. That doesn't mean anything if I don't understand what the behind it. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not for us to clearly understand, this is the process we thought through how to do this. This is phase 1 going next. Like, in the next, I see this for the next 3 years. That's great. What's coming? How can I support what you're doing right now if I don't know?
And some of that, though, is hard to put in writing because we don't know which grant will be made available through the state and federal. So this will be, as I said, it's a working document. So as those grant announcements become available, that's when we will start truly, okay, this is available, this we can then tackle this project. So it's hard to kind of, because there are still some unknowns just with that additional funding piece. But this is just kind of a starting point, but I appreciate that suggestion. And we'll, like I said, we're going to continue to have these. So that may be another handout that we provide to everybody that kind of gives the breakdown of how this was developed and the reasoning behind that.
So I think maybe Haley, a little bit of that context is that some of us may not realize to redo a mile of road takes about $1 million, right? And so the millage that we are looking to put forth is only going to raise a certain amount. So like, you know, what Haley was saying is that we are also depending heavily on grants. So we have to earn some money through the millage in order to apply to those grants and get extra money to do more.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that explanation. What I'm saying is that explanation needs to be in writing for our community to understand what the process is. Right now, all we can say is this is making me where is my.
I was just gonna add real quick that, you know, we often do a 20-year capital improvements plan, but data has shown that capital improvements plans are typically followed or accurate for 3 to 4 years because priorities change or something happens and things shift. I think the plan, I mean, if this was implemented as it's presented right here and it was continuously renewed, the plan would be to work around the whole city, get every street done. But your question, I fully appreciate why this street, not this one. And, you know, the only thing I could answer on that is there's a annual budget that's allowed. Priority one, let's keep roads that are good or fair, keep them good or fair as long as we can. So there's got to be some preventive maintenance in there. And then we do reconstruct because there are a lot of reconstructions that are needed in the city. So it's selecting those. If you asked 500 people to prepare a list of projects with this budget, I can guarantee you, if you didn't talk to anybody else, there'd be 500 different solutions. And I fully get that. And it's, you know, it's human nature to look at it and say, what about mine? And, you know, things could be shifted around. That's absolutely, as Haley mentioned, it's a draft. At some point, it's just picking a starting point and going from there. And
The purpose of this plan was just to show the reach that this budget could get within your community. How many roads can we touch on a yearly basis? How many roads can we fix on a yearly basis, and what we can do with that budget? You know, there were no individual requests taken into account. It was simply looking at a map of the city and what reach can we have with the budget. So that part is still yet to come that we will work with city management on, is refining that selection process. But as everyone said, we had to start somewhere and get this in front of you all to start the conversation. And that's the purpose.
My question is, so if we're gonna continue to do the preventive, how far down the road we gonna do the pull? Because we have to pull more. We're gonna keep doing the preventive, so we can keep these good, and your pull gonna be pull. So how far down the road you gonna reach this pull? How far down the road? How many years down the road?
Which I think is what she was after, is what is the whole projected plan.
I don't think that's what how far down is it gonna get before you even attempt to do something with the pull?
The goal of the plan is to continue preventative maintenance, to maintain the roads that are good. And then with whatever monies are left over, continue on the replacements as fast as budgets will allow. But as Mickey mentioned, to get the road system where it needs to be, this is the quickest way to do it with the budget that you have available.
So there's no pull inside.
But there are, if you look at so to address the poor and failing roads, it requires a full reconstruction. If you look at the draft plan, there have been full reconstruction projects identified. Those are the most expensive. We're talking millions of dollars to have that completed. So it's not that we're well aware we need to do that as well, but that's just the most expensive funds. We have to have funds available to tackle those projects. Right now with the current millage, it's going to be a long time until we are able to tackle that. Just with the first, second, third Wild and Hartwell Street project that was completed last year, it depleted our street maintenance fund to where we're not doing any roads projects this year, so that we can build that fund up to have funds available for a potential match to grant dollars. So excuse me? No, that is complete. That is separate from.
Was that?
No, that was sidewalk. That was a sidewalk project.
Is the curb project that went on all with the city? Was that a precursor to the new roads going in?
No.
Because, that's why I asked earlier, because I wanted to talk to the gentleman next to you, but you said that the curbs are really expensive, right?
if you're replacing that, adds a lot to the cost of the project.
I'm wondering, I don't know where the money came from. I don't know much about this, but I just know that the streets are atrocious, which everybody knows. And yet they spend money on the new curbs.
So that was a separate fund from our street fund. That was our sidewalk fund that the city council approved to utilize those dollars within that fund to address that.
Use that money for something that wasn't as dire as these poor streets that we're talking about. I mean, I understand the whole process of which you're going through, but to me, it just seemed like that money, why would it get approved for something that wasn't in dire need of being done versus the other?
So the funding, they had different requirements that we had to utilize those dollars for sidewalk projects only. They could not be applied to road projects. And that was based off of the assessment that was created a long time ago. So we had to utilize those dollars on sidewalk projects. So it's completely separate from any road projects.
And part of that, the goal of that was making more of the ramps ADA compliant. So it had to be spent on sidewalk, and to replace the ramp, we have to replace the curb in front of it to make it compliant. So that was done. It was dedicated sidewalk funds on that. And so we replaced the curb to make the dub downs proper, because the city still has some that are steps. And then it just had some that didn't meet current requirements. So it's about trying to provide that accessibility for everybody in the city.
I'm gonna assume that if your road bed is down through the asphalt, through the gravel, down in the dirt, that we're number 5. But you're not gonna do anything for our streets. Am I correct?
I mean, our street isn't even listed anywhere on the whole.
I don't-
We're already down in the dirt on our street. Would you consider that a failed street?
I don't understand what you mean a 5. What does that mean? Oh, okay, gotcha.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of pictures
You're
of
saying
our
we're only
road.
doing good and fair.
No, it's trying to keep roads in good and fair, and then,
Therefore, you're not gonna do anything for people like us that live on a pothole street that's all the way through the structure down to the dirt. That's what we're trying to figure out. We've got pictures from a couple of years ago. We have pictures on our street alone, which is less than a quarter mile. 45 potholes. The smallest one that we even took a picture of was 12 inches, and the largest one was 40. Now, it doesn't do me any good to call the city. And Kevin, I'm sorry. It doesn't do me any good to call the city. Because they send a truck out and they throw a shovel full of coal mix or whatever it is, and they do 6 or 7 potholes, and they drive away because they've had a busy day. That doesn't do me any good at all to live on that street. I call my realtor, our house is going down in value because people can't drive down the street to see it. If it was my choice, I'd sell the house, move out of this damn city, and go somewhere that's got a plan. Because I don't see a plan here.
This is the start of the plan. We have to identify a level of funding to support the projects. As we stated, the
I
full
get that.
with.
I understand that part.
Yep.
Here's my problem. I live on a street that you allow street parking on. Okay? So every single night, there's people parked on the street. If they're parked on the street at night, they're parked there all day long. Okay? So all the traffic on that street, whether it's the garbage truck, the dump truck, whatever it is coming down that street, only works on one side of the street, which of course is worse than the other side of the street where people just park their cars. So I'd like to know how we get on a list, and Kevin, I'm gonna hold you to this one, to get some of the hot mix to fix the potholes and how we change the street to fully non-parking. Every house has a garage. Every house has a driveway. They don't have to park in the street. Why do we allow it?
And we should
And
not.
that's got as much to do as paving the street. I know you're not gonna come pave my street. Pat, you've driven down it. Kevin, you drove down it a week or 2 ago. It's not in good condition. You're not gonna pay for my car repair. You're not gonna pay when I have to sell my house for less money. So what are you gonna do?
This is our way. We're trying to identify a way to start making the necessary improvements. We're well aware, all of our roads, there's not a shortage of need. We have several roads who have that similar condition and that similar problem. So we're starting to, we have to start somewhere.
Anything being done.
We have to start somewhere.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna give the city $500 or $600 a year in more taxes to watch streets that don't need to be repaired, be repaired.
I just want to make sure real quick, because we have to leave, that this is in place of the 3% or in addition to the 3%?
This would be in addition to,
So it would be a total of 9%.
that's correct.
Okay, so instead of jumping out, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a bus driver here in Albion. Where does the signs fit in this budget or something? Because there's a lot of streets that have no signs. And all the potholes, like they were saying. And the most dangerous part of being a bus driver is going around these holes. And then places where it's not supposed to be no parking, you got people parking. And you're trying to squeeze the bus down that road. And you got cars on both sides and in front of a school too. But the most important thing, we got lives of children every day, $100,000 machine, and we're tearing them up with the roads that we have here in Albion. And also over here by the TSC, I think it is, or the farm store there, where all these buses and stuff, right, that road goes in there. You're dodging on that road and you got kids walking in the dark with bus drivers going like this because the roads are so bad. It's very dangerous for a child. But I complained about the signs last year and you can't even get a new sign in this town. That's very, very sad for Albion.
Yeah.
The value of Albion has gone down so bad, it is sad to say you live in Albion.
Are you talking about street signs?
Yes, ma'am. Street signs and railroad sign. Bus drivers supposed to be able to see them. You can't see them. They're just, no, you got stop signs that says pure white. Doesn't even say stop on it anymore.
That's a great perspective that you have from driving the bus. A lot of when we do a road reconstruction or even a resurface, we always look at the signs. They do get replaced as part of those projects. Yeah, it was just done on Irwin, it was done on North, I think North Clark. So as those projects occur, I think first, second, third, I think those were done as well. So I don't know about the other streets that aren't part of the project. I guess that would be, if there's anything Patrick can address, but when there's a road reconstruction or resurface, we do look at the signs, stop signs, street name signs, everything that's on
So we
there.
gotta wait for a reconstruction to happen to get a sign?
Well, not necessarily saying that, but those are part of those projects. So that's what I'm saying. So when those projects occur, signs are replaced.
Kevin can answer your question about the signs or help address that.
Signs are something we're currently in the process of putting up. I have several brand new signs at the street department that we are going to put up. The reason why we can't get them up right away is currently it's been the weather. Those same guys drive snow plows, those same guys go clean off drains, those same guys patch potholes. And I'll give you a good for instance, with vacation and family issues. Today I had 3 people. So it's a work in progress. We have several signs that need to go up and we currently have them purchased.
So whatever, are you saying mostly the no parking signs?
Excuse me?
Are you mostly saying like the no parking signs? on the
Street signs, railroad sign, and no parking signs in front of schools where you got kids running every day, you got people parked there. You can't even see the kids because they're on Cooper Street. There's no parking in that area, but the whole road, and you got people parking everywhere. And the street sign, name of the streets.
Oh, those kind of street signs. Like the name?
The name of the streets, we gotta know what street you're on.
We have a large inventory of those that are going up.
It's been over a year since I complained.
Is the best way to contact something about streets, just to go directly to Kevin, or is there like a website where we can enter information like that?
Yep, you can enter information through the website. Bonnie Edmonds is also the administrative assistant for DPW, or you can go directly with Superintendent O'Brien, who works directly with the DPW guys and sets the schedule for them as well.
So on the website, how would we get to that spot?
It's under public services.
Yeah, and it's kind of on the back page, but there's a complaint form on the website. We should put it on the front page, make it a little easier.
That'd be great.
Marta.
Finally. Didn't the city get some federal government funds from, that COVID stuff? So what are they doing with that money?
So we did, we received money through the American Rescue Plan. And right now with, there's certain requirements on what you can utilize those dollars for.
I understand that.
One of them is to supplement lost revenue. And with that, right now, we're looking to utilize the majority of those. As I mentioned, the city has experienced, continues to experience population decline. And with that, a lot of the funding that we receive from the state is based off of population. So it's continued to decrease, but we have to be able to provide the services to our residents. So even though the population is decreasing, our infrastructure is not decreasing. The services that we are expected to provide, they're not decreasing. However, with the loss of revenues, employee and staffing, they're decreasing because we have to have money available to hire and to fill those positions. So we're working with a smaller staff than what we've had for years ago to maintain that same level of service. So yes, you have seen a decrease in the service level that you have experienced in the past, but that is a result of population decline. Like I said, we will need to have 6,000 more residents come back to lift that burden from the residents who are currently living here.
So what were those American Rescue Plan dollars used for them?
Right now, we're looking to, we have until 2026 to expend them. So right now, just revenue loss is our state requirement. We have to have a balanced budget.
So it sounds like a silly question, but it's really a real question for me. Is there anything we can do ourselves? Because in our, like right in front of our house, it's so deep that the axle can come off of our car. So can we like mix some concrete and pour it in there? I'm being totally 100% serious. Is there anything we can do as homeowners to patch the area on our street ourselves?
No, you really just need to report those. If there's an exceptionally large deep pothole, report those to us.
Yes.
Okay. Just keep up on the reporting.
Yep.
Yes, do not pour. Yes, do
Please
not
make a
pour
phone
cement.
call.
Because we thought about pouring concrete in it.
It's okay, they're not coming down.
Okay. So just to clarify and ask a question. So you keep saying that there's room to determine what actual streets go into the plan. So these streets are not stamped and go, these will be the streets. This plan was to let us know the scope of what our budget could cover.
That is correct.
Okay, my question is, you gave us information on the scale that you use to determine whatever. How are you married what you know the condition of our streets to be with an equitable distribution of what streets you're touching in each precinct? Because I want to know like the percentage of ones that are being addressed in this plan.
So the percentage, those are the most expensive projects.
So Phil just brought up to me, we didn't bring it with us, but we did run, what would it take to get all the streets in good condition? That would be a one-time estimated 60, it was about $60 million. So if that helps give a little bit of size and scale or severity, I mean, you can see kind of what the city's up against to bring all the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, you know, basically probably everything below a 7 to give it the improvements that are recommended was like a 1-year, $60 million investment and then maintenance after that. So I know it's, you know, to look at this and say, how do you select these streets? And we did rotate through by precinct. That was something we tried to do to be equitable and how the funds are rotated around. And then within that, I think it was largely, and Phil can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was doing the combination of maintenance and then how much can we reconstruct, what funds are left available to do that. So, and that's the balance, and that's an exercise you can kind of see. You could almost go through and come up with your own list by year, trying to be cognizant of the funds. But the only challenge with that is, you know, you look at 2023, and I will throw out, you see Haven Road is on there, 1.1 million. You say, well, we could spend that other places, but those are federal funds. And actually, that, one spot of good news, the city had 375,000 secured for that, but we did pick up another 415,000 of money that became available to help, again, leverage the local, reduce the local investment and maximize the federal dollars. So you can't shift that anywhere you want, but the other maintenance items or the local streets, those can be shifted.
You're
talking
about
Haven Road.
I'm sorry, she just had one follow-up.
Yep, is it possible, and I know this would be a lot of work, but is it possible to get multiple plans that address the issue in a different way? Like, I appreciate what you just said, but I would also like to see like what streets would be targeted if we work our way through those, some one, like a percentage of one, percentage of two, in a different way. You get what I'm saying? So that as a citizen, I can say, okay, even though my road is not being addressed, I can see the needs of the community that are being addressed in this plan. And this current one, I still want, I don't have another list.
I went through and added up all the reconstruction projects, which would all be a very poor road. It's 65% of these funds.
65% of the fund.
Of the 7.4 million, 65% of that is going to your lowest roads.
Based off of this,
Based off of this one.
but not based off what our lowest were.
I don't know.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I don't know that percentage off the top of my head. It's probably in these documents.
How can they reconstruct Haven Road if they're still doing a study on the river?
Yeah.
And they're right in the process. How can you do the road when you don't know what's gonna happen with the river
The dam.
and the dam and the bridge? How can it be done?
No, that's a great question. So the road is not impacted directly by the study on the dams there. So that study is underway. The city just got a grant for that. That's underway right now. The project includes the reconstruction is the roadway. We are looking at doing some preventive, or I'd probably call it capital maintenance on the bridge. We're gonna put a surface on there to give it a little better grit and seal it up, and then also want to replace the sidewalk on there. The sidewalk's in terrible condition. Now, that bridge is currently posted for a load rating because of some structural deficiencies. We are not investing any money to improve the structural adequacy of that bridge because of the reason that you stated. If the study shows that it is feasible and perhaps favorable to remove the dams, then we really don't want to spend money on that. There is actually some state and I think even some federal money that is becoming available to address dams, which there's never been funding for dams in the past, or it's been very, very minimal. So the timing could be good on this, but to your point, if the dam is removed, then there's a good chance that the bridge would probably be demolished and a shorter bridge. Right now, it's a 3-span bridge. There's 3 individual sections that make up that Haven Road Bridge. That could easily come down to 1 or 2 span, which would be a lot more economical to replace. So, but we also know when dam removal projects are initiated, from the study until actual removal is typically at least 4, usually 5 years or more. And it just takes time to get, there's so much permitting that goes on with this. You can't even, we just finished one and a year was lost because Eagle, which used to be DEQ, was arguing with EPA over the definition of a wetland. So that study stood still for almost a year. So because of that disagreement. So we don't want to spend a whole lot of dollars, but we want to make that bridge a little more passable, a little safe. So we're going to seal up the surface, repair some of the holes on the bridge deck, replace the sidewalk, and upgrade the guardrail to meet current requirements.
Is there a load limit on that bridge then?
Yes.
Yes, listen. All them semis that come across there.
It is posted.
It is posted.
Yeah, well, it doesn't
I don't
mean
know.
there's not being invited by it then. You should see the double bottom trucks that go by there loaded.
Can you tell me what a millage is? A single force millage is?
Yeah, so this is the one I went through a little bit earlier, but you've got, it has the sheet that has the roadway pavement treatments on it. The middle column says resurface, and I think you're looking at the actual list of projects. So a mill and resurface, a single course. When the paver goes by on a road, we call that a course of asphalt. They're typically, they can do ultra thin, which is 1 inch, but typically it's 1.5 inches, maybe up to 3 inches. 3.5 is probably the maximum on a single lift or course. Those are interchangeable. We call it a course of asphalt or a lift of asphalt. So a single course would be, for example, if a mill came by, milled out 1.5 inches, and then they came back and they paved in that 1.5 inches. So you create a gap, then they fill the gap. 2 course resurfacing or 2 lifts would be maybe milling 3 inches. And then they come back and they do 1.5 inches. We call that a leveling course. Then they do another 1.5 inches called the top course. And the reason we do multiple courses is the lowest one is, meant to get a pretty smooth ride. The leveling course is to try and level out any bumps, and the top course should be the smooth finish. So single course means 1 course, 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. We have a lot of 2-inch mill and fills called out in here. So 2-inch, mill 2, pave 2. If you see 2 course, that means 3 inches, mill out 3 inches, pave 1.5 inches, and then another 1.5 inches. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I was looking on here at the streets in Chestnut School, where that's being done there. But I know at the bottom of Chestnut Street, there's been 2 different spots where they've had to go in and redo water mains and pipes and stuff. I'm just wondering why they weren't going to do a full fill. When you look over here at another street, that basically the people that use it, who live on it, are the only people who use it, and it's gonna have a full depth pavement reconstruction. I was just kind of, and I was thinking about, well, for one thing, I live on Chestnut, I told you about how it's that now. But the fact that when you start to do the Albion Street Bridge, Chestnut's gonna get a whole lot of traffic. It's just like when Albion Iron was there. And if anybody ever puts any building on where Albion Iron used to be, that street is gonna get the traffic just like they did back then. So I was just wondering, why aren't they going to do a better than just a little bit?
Which page are you looking at?
Okay, I'm in the council package, and it's 2461.
I think I can address that, Mickey, without specifically, but this goes back to the, we haven't.
2461, and then the other one is page 31.
This goes back to what we were saying earlier, that this is exactly the feedback that we need as we go through developing this plan, because when we developed the projects on here, we didn't go out and walk every single street, and we don't have the community understanding that city staff and that you all have. And so this was just a starting point to get, a plan started so that we can actually develop the actual plan with city staff and with the community. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
This is for Mickey I forgot the name. This is really off the chart, really. Is there different asphalts for different, like Michigan or for Indiana? We have a son who lives in Lafayette, and we travel back and forth. My question is, Michigan always seems to do this chip seal, spray, stones, and then whatever. Ohio, Indiana, and I even asked, we were stopped someplace, road construction gentleman, do you do the stone spray and then put the little pebbles on? And he says, no, we don't do that. And I'm thinking, they have frost trees and whatever in Indiana, it's not that far away. Why do we do it and they don't do it. It's, you know, and if you have an answer, fine. If you don't, it's okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's a practice that's been successful in Michigan. I don't know. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota. They chip seal roads all over the place there, Wisconsin as well. So maybe it's just that far enough, that northern climate, maybe they get down. I mean, I was just on spring break and drove south, and I'm always amazed at how good condition the roads are. And they don't, it seemed like every road was just resurfaced. I mean, every road I drove on, it was nice. And I think it's just a matter of the climate. They don't have, as you get farther south, they don't have that
Yeah, but
severe
Indiana
freezing.
isn't really south where, you know.
It depends how far south.
69
Yep.
and
Yep.
it's, but they do have frost, freeze, and they have winter in Indiana.
I got a question. What is the reason of complaining about the road? What do you want? Why do you want us to keep calling you about the road?
That's how we identify problem areas besides us driving. You
Even when
call and
fix
report a
it, like
pothole.
Lincolnshire, y'all just fixed Lincolnshire. I guarantee you in 2 days, that same road about to be messed up again. So you want us to call you back again? But y'all got no fault insurance. I done already wrote out a complaint. The insurance company called me and said, y'all got no fault on our streets. So y'all don't cover nothing even if you tear up the car. So why do you want us to keep calling?
Full capture.
Yeah.
So it goes back to, yeah, just so that we're aware, to go back and refill, but the material that we're using to fill the potholes, as Superintendent O'Brien said, that's the cold patch. So after all, it's going to get pushed out. Next week, the hot asphalt plants will begin opening, so we will utilize the hot patch, which will stay in place and intact longer than what the cold patch was. And that material is only used in the winter season. So like I said, right now, it's the worst, our streets are the worst condition because we're coming out of that winter season. We will begin starting to patch to improve the
My
potholes.
grandmother on Eric,
Mhm.
her same street been that way ever since I've been a kid. I know every pothole to ride around. When I go see my sister in the projects, I know which way to go around. And see, that's what we mean by poor. Them people don't have the money to get their front end fixed every time they drive down the street. And they can't call y'all, and y'all can't even help them. And it's hard to understand how y'all fix the streets that y'all do, because we don't even drive down the street y'all fix.
So we said, so this is just a draft, and this is just the start. We wanted to get feedback from our residents before we finalize this plan. But if there are issues, call and report them so that we can address them until we have the funding to fully repair
I have a comment. My feedback is I think we should move the poor roads, the ones that are down to dirt, further up on your priority list. I thought what I heard was we're gonna resurface, and then if there's money, then we'll do the total reconstruction. I think we ought to move those reconstructs higher up on the priority list, and then if there's money, resurface.
I'm about to be 50. Them streets been like that since I've been a kid. And that's not nice.
So folks, yeah, like City Manager Snyder had said at the beginning, we are due to end at 7:30. It's now 7:35. We will have other town halls scheduled to continue these conversations, because I know there's more people who weren't able to be here tonight. We're hoping to capture them, but you all are also welcome to come back. You know, you get to hear more information once questions come up from the citizens. So definitely let others know if you're talking to folks and they want information. Encourage them to keep their ears and eyes open for other days for more town halls. But we appreciate you all being here this evening. And so I will go ahead and close this town hall meeting at 7:35 p.m.